The British monarchy has always been built on tradition, duty, and carefully maintained appearances. Behind the walls of royal residences, however, decisions about titles, roles, and the future direction of the crown have often been the subject of intense speculation. And now, a dramatic new claim has captured worldwide attention. A claim suggesting that Prince William and Catherine have taken a historic step involving Queen Camilla's future royal status. Reports circulating online have sparked a wave of discussion, with some claiming that Camilla has been stripped of her royal title. But what is the reality behind these rumors? What would such a decision actually mean for the monarchy? And why has the relationship between the current king's reign and the future reign of Prince William become such a fascinating topic? While there has been no official confirmation of such a dramatic event, the idea has fueled conversations about one important question. When a new monarch takes the throne, how much should the previous royal arrangements continue, and where should the future king draw the line? For years, Camilla's position inside the royal family was one of the most complicated stories in modern royal history. Her journey from a controversial figure in the public eye to becoming queen alongside King Charles was shaped by decades of challenges, criticism, and determination. When Charles married Camilla, many understood that her role would evolve with his reign. She stood beside him during public engagements, supported his charitable work, and became an important part of his public image as king. But the monarchy is not only about individuals, it is also about continuity, structure, and preparing for the future. And that future belongs to Prince William and Catherine. As the next generation prepares to lead the institution, questions about how the monarchy will operate under William's reign have continued to grow. Would he maintain the same structure created during his father's reign? Would he make changes to reflect a smaller, more modern monarchy? Or would he preserve every tradition that came before him? According to the dramatic claims spreading online, a private discussion supposedly took place where William and Catherine made their position clear. The story suggests that the future king wanted to establish a firm boundary between one reign and the next. The idea behind the claim was simple. The role of one monarch's household should not automatically continue forever into another monarch's era. Supporters of this argument say that every new reign creates a new chapter. A new king or queen must have the freedom to create their own working structure, choose their own advisors, and decide how the monarchy will represent itself to the public. But critics argue that such a move would be deeply personal, especially considering Camilla's long journey to acceptance within the royal family. For decades, Camilla lived under intense public scrutiny. Her relationship with Charles was examined by millions around the world, especially after the tragic death of Princess Diana. Many believed she would never fully become accepted by the public, yet over time, her role changed. She eventually became the woman standing beside the future king, and later, the queen consort. That transformation was not achieved overnight. It required years of carefully managed public appearances, charitable work, and a gradual rebuilding of public confidence. So the idea that her position could somehow be reduced in the future would naturally raise emotional questions. Could a future king separate respect for a previous queen's service from the authority connected to her position? This is where the debate becomes more complicated. A royal title is not simply a personal honor. It carries expectations, symbolism, and influence. Throughout history, royal households have depended on clear lines of authority. Confusion over who has power, who controls appointments, and whose instructions should be followed could create unnecessary tension. Those who support William's reported approach argue that a smaller monarchy requires clear boundaries. They believe that once a monarch's reign ends, the next monarch must have the ability to reshape the institution according to the challenges of their own time. The monarchy has changed many times throughout history. Traditions that once seemed permanent have been adjusted when circumstances demanded it. The same principle could apply to future royal households. However, the emotional side of the issue cannot be ignored. For King Charles, Camilla has been more than just a royal partner. She has been someone who stood beside him through years of public pressure and personal criticism. Any decision affecting her future role would inevitably involve complicated personal feelings. The question becomes whether a king can separate personal loyalty from institutional responsibility. This balance has challenged monarchs for centuries. A ruler must protect the people closest to them while also protecting the future of the crown itself. According to the online claims, the disagreement allegedly centered around whether certain privileges, household arrangements, and symbolic roles connected to Camilla's position should continue after Charles's reign. The discussion reportedly involved questions about staff, royal residences, security, and the level of public involvement that former senior royals should maintain. Supporters of reform argue that these decisions are not about punishment. Instead, they say they are about making sure the monarchy remains focused on active service. The argument is that royal resources and influence should follow official duties, not simply personal connections. This philosophy reflects a broader movement within modern royal circles, creating a more streamlined institution that focuses on fewer working royals carrying greater responsibility. Prince William has often been associated with preparing the monarchy for the future. His generation faces a very different public environment compared with previous monarchs. Social media, changing public expectations, and questions about the value of tradition have forced the royal family to rethink how it operates. Catherine's role in these discussions has also attracted attention. As William's future queen, she represents the next stage of the monarchy. Her presence alongside William symbolizes the transition from one generation to another. The dramatic online claims suggest that Catherine supported the idea that royal roles should always be connected to duty rather than personal status. Whether or not these specific claims are true, the larger conversation reveals something important about the monarchy. Every new reign brings questions about change. The crown survives not because it refuses to evolve, but because it adapts while protecting its core traditions. And perhaps the biggest question is not whether Camilla's title can be changed, but how the monarchy will handle the delicate transition from Charles's era to William's future reign. Because when the time eventually comes for William to become king, he will face one of the greatest challenges any monarch can face, honoring the past while creating the future. And behind closed doors, those decisions may shape the royal family for generations to come. As the debate surrounding Queen Camilla's future role continues to capture public attention, one thing becomes clear. The transition from one royal era to another has always been one of the most sensitive moments in the history of the monarchy. A new monarch does not simply inherit a crown. They inherit a system, a reputation, and decades of traditions created by those who came before them. Every decision carries meaning, and every change sends a message about the direction of the institution. For Prince William, the challenge would not only be becoming king. It would be deciding what kind of king he wants to become. Would he preserve every arrangement created during his father's reign, or would he introduce changes designed to reflect a new generation? This is the question at the center of the speculation surrounding Camilla's future position. The claims circulating online suggest that William believes the monarchy must avoid having overlapping centers of influence. According to this narrative, the future king wants a clear structure where there is one official royal household, one chain of command, and one direction for the crown. Supporters of this idea argue that history has shown the dangers of uncertainty within royal institutions. When different figures hold similar levels of influence, confusion can develop. Staff may receive conflicting instructions. Public appearances may become complicated. Even symbolic gestures can create questions about who represents the monarchy. For a modern institution that depends heavily on public confidence, clarity becomes extremely important. However, the situation involving Camilla would always be emotionally complicated. Unlike many royal figures who were born into the institution, Camilla entered a world filled with extraordinary pressure. Her journey was unlike that of previous queens. She faced years of criticism, intense media attention, and public debate about her place beside Charles. Yet over time, she built a role based on loyalty and service. Those close to Charles have often highlighted the support Camilla provided during difficult periods of his life. She stood beside him as he prepared for his future role and continued supporting causes important to the monarchy. Because of this history, any suggestion that her influence could be reduced would naturally create strong reactions. The question many observers ask is whether reducing a royal role means disrespecting the person who held it. Those who support reform would argue that these are two separate issues. They believe someone can be respected for their service while still accepting that a future monarch has the right to create a different structure. This idea has appeared throughout royal history. Every monarch eventually leaves behind a system that the next monarch must adjust. What worked for one generation may not always work for another. For William, the priority would likely be ensuring that the monarchy remains effective in a changing world. The younger generation of royals has grown up in an era where transparency, efficiency, and public accountability are constantly discussed. The expectations placed on the monarchy today are very different from previous decades. A smaller and more focused royal family has often been presented as a way to maintain relevance. Under this approach, official roles would be connected closely to public duties. Those carrying out responsibilities on behalf of the crown would receive the resources and support needed to perform those duties. But those without official responsibilities would have a different position. This distinction between respect and authority is at the heart of many royal discussions. A person can remain honored without holding the same level of institutional influence. And this is where the future of Camilla's role becomes a symbolic issue. It is not only about one person. It represents a larger question about how the monarchy handles change. Should traditions continue simply because they have existed for years? Or should each generation have the freedom to reshape the institution according to the needs of its time? For William and Catherine, supporters believe the answer would be modernization while maintaining respect for history. Their future reign will likely focus heavily on connecting the monarchy with a younger audience while preserving the traditions that make the institution unique. The transition will also involve difficult personal decisions. Royal history has shown that duty often requires choices that are emotionally painful. Kings and queens have repeatedly faced moments where personal feelings had to be balanced against the responsibilities of the crown. If William eventually makes changes to the royal structure, those decisions would not necessarily represent personal conflict. They would reflect the reality that every monarch must define their own reign. For King Charles, this would represent one of the most complicated moments of his legacy. His reign has been built around service, modernization, and preparing the monarchy for the future. But every reform creates difficult questions, especially when those reforms affect people closest to him. The challenge for Charles would be ensuring that his support for Camilla does not appear to come at the expense of the institution he has spent his life serving. The monarchy has always survived by balancing emotion with responsibility. Behind the ceremonies and public appearances are real relationships, real disagreements, and real decisions that shape the future. And perhaps that is why stories about William, Catherine, Charles, and Camilla continue to attract such enormous attention. They represent a moment of transition. An older generation that spent decades building its place within the crown. And a younger generation preparing to take responsibility for what comes next. Whether or not the rumors about Camilla losing her title are accurate, the discussion reveals a deeper reality. The future of the monarchy will depend on how it handles change. Respect for the past and preparation for the future must exist together. Because when Prince William eventually becomes king, one of his greatest responsibilities will be proving that tradition and transformation can exist side by side. The crown is not preserved by standing still. It is preserved by knowing what must remain and what must evolve. And as the next chapter of royal history approaches, every decision made today could influence the monarchy for decades to come.